board? Okay, so I will share screen and we are going to start with our lessons for today. All right. No. How to build a strong rebuttals, which made by Yami, and we are using each other's slides each week. So the contents for today is what's a rebuttal and how to build a strong one. Let's build a strong one. Brief introduction about logical fallacies, one, and have a debate on the given motion. All right, so let's have what is rebuttals. As we have studied and how to build such thing, anybody to tell me what is a rebuttals? If no one is going to tell me, I'll choose randomly. Okay. Alice, please tell me what is a rebuttal?
Yes. Please wait me a few minutes. Just a few minutes. I have some problem with my internet.
Sure. Okay. So let's just skip.
Okay, rebuttal is the response and counter argument to the team's substantive or analysis.
Yeah, correct. So how to build it? There's a couple of problems with my slides. Step by step, all right? So first is identify the claim you are answering. Secondly is make your counterclaim. And thirdly is to provide your evidence or explain your justification. So you have to identify the claim that you are going to say, like the arguments that the opposing team told you. Like for example, they said that then zoo is actually taking the animals from their home place, which means that they are not allowed to stay in their home and they are left by their family. However, our rebuttals are we're not even if this is true, we are not going to agree with it because we are not going to agree with it because who will be sure that the place they are actually living right now is safe? There is predators, there is many other dangers that they have to face. Why not putting them in the zoo where there are best, where there are the best, where there are foods and others? Secondly, it's to make your counterclaim. Like think about it. Think about the claim that they have made and then starting to make it your own. So you have to write all of those down and provide evidence or explain your justification or like explain that why do you think your claim is better than their claim. Let's watch this video.
And that's why you never help anyone change a tire.
But you're wrong about that.
Can you hear anything? Sure.
Helping someone change a tire is great.
Is that it? Is that all the rebuttal you've got?
Yep.
Wow, that really lacks some power. We need to work on a way to get better at this. Hi everyone, my name is Nikki and this is James, and welcome back to our Conquering Debate series. Today, we're here to teach you about 3 common rebuttal techniques.
It's really important when responding to an argument to make clear for the adjudicator what those responses are and what role they play in the debate. We're going to help you make sure that you can pull out the most effective response when you need to.
The 3 common rebuttal techniques we're talking about today are principles, effectiveness, and mitigation. When approaching a debate, it's important to consider not just that the point is factually correct, but whether it's ethical. This forms the basis of our principles rebuttals. To take a better look at principles, Feel free to look at our other content to see how to run them.
Principled rebuttal can be really powerful. You can use it to show that even if a point has benefits, if it violates basic human rights like freedom of choice, maybe you shouldn't do it.
The outcome for an argument may be both positive and ethical, but that argument isn't enough. It's also important to consider whether the method for getting to that outcome is ethical too. Often, if the method hurts a lot of people, the outcome being positive is just not worth it.
Exactly. When it comes to principled rebuttal, you must ask two questions. Firstly, is the outcome ethical? And secondly, are the steps to achieve that outcome ethical as well? If it infringes on some basic rights such as freedom, speech, choice, or your right to live, then there may be a problem or a trade-off that just isn't worth making.
Now, a point may be entirely simple, but may fail on a practical level. In this instance, it's important to consider effective rebuttal.
Mai em rửa mai em mắc đau răng tỉ rồi đó. Chả mai mắc tỉ. Em đi.
Your opposition is correct goal, you're just going about it the right way. Or when you're the negative team and you believe that the affirmative team's plan isn't going to fix the problem that they have already set up.
For example, in a debate dealing with banning school uniforms, if the opposition stated that we should ban school uniforms because it makes children healthier, this would fail the logic check. When you hear an argument, you should always think, will it make a difference and how much of a difference will it make? In this instance, whilst banning uniforms has some benefits, there is no logical explanation between banning uniforms and childhood obesity.
To further understand logical flow and links, consider this example. If I were to say that the sun was a key ingredient in a hamburger, this might not make a lot of sense. But if I explained it further, I might be able to make it a bit clearer. So the sun makes grass grow. When the grass grows, cows eat grass. And as cows eat the grass, they get fat. And then, of course, the cows get made into hamburgers. Now it's a little bit clearer. For every argument, there should be some kind of logical chain like this. Your rebuttal needs to get into this chain and break one or more of the links to prove that the argument is not effective in getting from the start to the end.
The third type of rebuttal is mitigation. Mitigation rebuttal is really important when the opposition has proposed an argument that is principled and has a reasonable effectiveness. It is important to critique the effectiveness of the arguments proposed by the opposition. Often, debating teams are guilty of overinflating the issue or claiming their solution is way more effective than it actually is.
When this happens, you need to prove that the benefits are smaller, which makes your case comparatively more important. Remember, you don't need a perfect case to win a debate. You just need to prove that your case is stronger or more important than your opposition's. This means you don't always have to prove that their points are true, just that they're less important than they think. Often, this is more than enough to win a debate as long as your team has a strong case as well.
Let's take a look at an example of mitigation rebuttal in action. Let's say the topic is that all schools should become co-educational, and the opposition makes a very broad point that everyone will benefit. Mitigation rebuttal works in this sense by saying that while some people may benefit, the group of people that do not benefit at all are much larger, and therefore that is mitigation rebuttal in action. In summary, it's important to consider these three types of rebuttal techniques: principle, effectiveness, and mitigation. Try to work out what categories the opposition's points run under, and it'll help you get your rebuttal quickly and easily.
And don't forget, we'll be covering a whole range of topics. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss a thing. See you next time.
Bye.
Okay, that's the end of the video. Anybody to what? Alice, you cannot hear anything.
I can hear a little bit, but not much.
Maybe it's your audio fault, not mine. Or
I hear sometimes I hear, sometimes I cannot hear anything.
oh, Yeah, it must be a couple of problems, I think. Okay, so now I would like anybody, if you hear it like very clearly, please review all of the answers. Yeah, please review the answer review the content of the video for everyone. Nobody can? Okay, all right. So basically, yeah, this video told us to how to make a rebuttal, and with this at the same time having us to know and clearly, how at the same time telling us about an example of this, an example of how to make a rebuttal. Moreover, what we have looking here is that it's also told us we don't have to win by very strong case. We just have to win. We just need to win by proving that this part, our case is stronger than the other case. All right. So example, give a rebuttal to because uniforms can unite students, therefore uniforms shouldn't be abolished. Let's turn back. So the rebuttals is that because uniforms can unite students, therefore uniforms shouldn't be abolished. So in our opinion, even if this claim is true, it is not going to be beneficial for the students as a whole because many kinds of uniforms, they are the same uniforms of a schools. However, they are different in clothes. For example, some can wear the long pants, some can wear trousers, and some can wear skirts. This is not the united, and this is not making or uniting the students. However, this is only creating the better separate and the better reasons for the bulliers to bullies the other students who doesn't wear the same uniforms as they do. This is a brief example, right? So now I would love for you guys to write down everything you heard about 31 logical fallacies in 8 minutes. And make sure that you can hear everything clearly. Can you hear anything? Or can you hear everything clearly? Okay.
If you find yourself talking to someone who strawmans so hard that they're going to be picking chaff out of their...
Oh no.
Why is that so fast?
Let's try again.
If you find yourself talking to someone who strawmans so hard that they're going to be picking chaff out of their hair for a week, it would be good to be able to point at what exactly it is that's making meaningful discussion impossible. I will also put a link to your website which has pages entitled Your Logical Fallacy Is, which also has more detailed explanations. Let's go. Fallacy of composition. If it's true of the parts, then it's true of the whole. If there are 3 great players on my hockey team, then my hockey team must also be great, right? And the opposite, fallacy of division. If it's true of the whole, then it must be true of the parts. If my flat is about half the size of your flat, then it follows logically that my doors must be half the size of your doors. The gambler's fallacy is the idea that streaks of good luck or bad luck exist and are not just random noise. It's been read 6 times in a row, it's on a streak. Tu quo qui? Or who are you to talk? If your sister, who does no exercise, says you should do 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week to be healthy, it is the tu quo qui fallacy to say, I'll do it when you do. Who are you to lecture me about what exercise I should be doing? Her not doing exercise says nothing about whether or not you should do it. Straw man, willfully misrepresenting an argument, often in a massively hyperbolic fashion. We should cut down on our use of fossil fuels. Oh, so you want to ban all cars and make 80-year-olds with suitcases run around on bicycles, do you? No. Ad hominem. You're evil, an evil witch. Burn the witch and don't listen to the witch's opinions. Sometimes people are obviously biased or subjective, and so you should treat their arguments with care. But it's generally better form to attack the argument rather than the person. Somewhat related to this is the genetic fallacy, which is assuming that an argument is automatically wrong because of its source. Even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Fallacious appeal to authority. Sometimes it's appropriate to look at what experts think on a topic, but fallacious appeals to authority bring in someone who's an expert in an entirely unrelated field and expect you to treat them as an expert in this field. Being an expert in particle physics doesn't mean you'll automatically have sensible opinions on, say, pig husbandry, or vice versa. Red herring. Fallacy of distraction. Well, they might have stolen the puppy, Your Honor, but look how sad they are to be in court. Red herrings may seem plausible, but are ultimately irrelevant. In our example, a person being sad because they have been made to come to court is not relevant to whether or not they actually stole the puppy. That particular red herring is also an example of appeal to emotion. Appeals to emotion attempt to distract you by making you feel bad for the other person. So why should we hire you for this job? Because if you don't hire me, then I'll be out on the street and I'll have to live in a cardboard box. You don't want to make me live in a cardboard box, do you? Appeal to popularity or bandwagon. 5 million people can't be wrong. Appeal to tradition. People have been doing this for thousands of years, so it must be right. Appeal to nature. Ooh, don't trust medicine or science. It's full of chemicals which are bad for you. Here, take this belladonna. Very natural. Appeal to ignorance. If you can't prove it false, it must be true, or vice versa. You can't prove that ghosts don't exist, therefore they must exist. Well, you can't prove that ghosts do exist, so therefore they clearly don't. Both of these are appeals to ignorance. Begging the question. Assuming to be true a premise that you are trying to prove. Zog the Great is infallible because in the big book of Zog the Great, it says that he's infallible, and we know that the text is infallible because it was written by Zog, who is infallible, because it says so in the book, which was written by someone who said. Equivocation is using one word to mean multiple things and thus drawing incorrect conclusions, often on purpose. Any law can be repealed by the proper authority. The law of gravity is a law. Therefore, the law of gravity can be repealed, which conflates law in the legal sense and law in the scientific sense and makes you look like a bit of an idiot. False dichotomy, or black or white. Either you agree with everything I say or you're an evil baby eater. There's no middle ground. Sort of opposite to the black and white fallacy is the middle ground fallacy, which says if some people think 2 plus 2 is 4 and some people think 2 plus 2 is 5, then clearly the answer lies somewhere in the middle. No, decision point fallacy or the Sorites paradox. The decision point fallacy says because there is a continuum, it means we can't distinguish between things. But just because the boundaries between things are a bit blurry doesn't mean we can't tell one thing from another. I know that a horse is a mammal and a frog's an amphibian. Even though frogs lay eggs, and so do some mammals. Duck-billed platypi, what you gonna do? The slippery slope fallacy is the assertion that one step will inevitably lead to another, which will inevitably lead to another, which will inevitably lead to doom. If you get a credit card, then you will overspend, and you will not be able to make your payments, and then you will definitely end up living on the street in a cardboard box. If you can stop at any of the steps, then it's a fallacy. Hasty generalizations, or anecdotes. This is where you draw a general conclusion from a small or biased sample. Obvious examples include things like, well, my aunt smoked 10 cigarettes a day and she lived to 109, so cigarettes mustn't be bad for you. But it's also one of the reasons that self-selective surveys aren't particularly good for drawing general conclusions about a population. Faulty analogy. Comparing things which aren't actually similar in the way that would be relevant. Government is like business. Since businesses strive to make a profit, so should government. Burden of proof. When you insist that it's incumbent upon the person who disbelieves your claims to provide proof against them.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty fast as all of you have said, right? So let's just skip this one and I will have a review for that. All right. So here, I will put it here. And we are going to, you should go to the Poe shouts not commit logical fallacies, right? Don't be fooled. So I will read a couple of logical fallacies for you and you should write everything down. Is that clear? Everyone, is that clear? Turn on your mic and, yeah, turn on your mic and say. Everyone, is that clear?
I think you should write it down and later when
No,
the
I'm
room.
not going to write it down. I really want, because you are studying debate. So what I need here is that you have to listen and start to write down what I have said. Is that clear? Clear, right? All right. So I am going to read the list of fallacies and please write down everything. First of all, a formal fallacy is an error in the argument's form. All formal fallacies are types of non sequitur. First, we have appeal to probability, taking something for granted because it would probably be the case or might possibly be the case. So, appeal to probability means that you are going to take something for granted because it would be the case. For example, you are going to take the slides that describe the meaning of the words, and then you will take that as your case or might possibly in the case. That is appeal to probability. Secondly, is arguments from fallacy, also known as the fallacy. This is the assumption that if a particular argument for a conclusion is fallacious, then the conclusion by itself is false, which means that the argument from fallacy or the fallacy, this is the assumption. Basically, it's an error, and you have your arguments, and your conclusions is a bit different, and your conclusions contain a kind of a different argument. For example, it is a fallacy, and yeah, it's completely false. To describe or to simplify it, everybody listen as carefully as possible because you are going to have 2 more days and you will have the midterm test. Okay, so if this particular argument for a conclusion is definitely false or fallacious, then the conclusion by itself is false, which means that the argument that you are going to take for the conclusion is definitely false, then all of your conclusion is actually false. So next is the base rate fallacy. It's making a probability judgment based on conditional probabilities without taking into account the effect of prior probabilities. To have a better understanding or to symbolize it, right? So this means that you have to put out the judgment. This judgment have its proportion and or the percentage that is going to happen or the possibilities that will be happening based on the conditional probabilities that you have. And you don't have any account that affect without taking into the account that effect of prior probabilities, which means that you need something. You have to you need the account, like you need to account the effects of that possibilities or the prior probabilities. All right. Next is conjunction fallacy. So conjunction fallacy is the assumption that an outcome simultaneously satisfying multiple conditions is more probable than an outcome satisfying a single one of them. So write down, please, conjunction fallacy. So this fallacy is that this assumption is that this outcome both satisfy the conditions and it's both satisfy the conditions that it have, and it's more probable than only an outcome satisfying a single one of them, which means that this assumption satisfy every conditions or a lot of conditions than an outcome satisfying a single one. Which means that if you use this, for example, in rebuttals, you said that, well, the assumptions, the rebuttals that what they are going to provide to us doesn't have as much proportions of have as much as proportions of possibilities as us. They only have 1%. However, we have 20 to 30%, which is a lot more than what they have. Well, this is actually the consumption fallacy and a conjunction fallacy, and you are not allowed to put this in debate. Next is non-sequitur fallacy, where the conclusion does not logically follow the premise, which means that the conclusion doesn't follow, can't say. So this kind of conclusion doesn't go follow the premise in a logical way, or it doesn't follow the title in another word. Clear, right? Next fallacies, we have propositional fallacies. We have the masked man. So the masked man fallacy is or elicits the substitution of identicals. Well, the substitution of identical designators in a true statement can lead to a false one. It may seem like quite hard to understand, but it's actually go in a very logical way. Which here, for example, if you want to create a substitution or the content using its synonyms of every word in a truth statement, well, actually, it can lead to a false one because many synonyms doesn't actually are synonyms. For example, there is one synonyms that can contain other word, like substantial. For example, big, substantial. But substantial also mean that they are actually developing in a controllable way. Well, if you want to use a synonyms, make sure that synonyms only have one meanings that is the same with the word that you're actually using. So if you use synonyms with this kind of word or the substitution of identical designators in a true statement, it can lead to a false one. Okay, one of the most used is ad hominem. So ad hominem logical fallacies is a fallacy that's you are attacking that person instead of attacking their argument. Well, ad hominem means that, for example, because she is Lily and Lily never said anything true, she is actually saying it's false. This is ad hominem, and this is not allowed to use in debate, which, in order to have a better understanding for you, this is completely strict in debate. You're not allowed to use it. Next. Okay. Well, there will be 4 more minutes. So yeah, we are going to continue for 4 more minutes. Next, the last one that we are going to study for today, because there are 31 logical fallacies, but I'm only going to teach you the main one. We have 2 things, which is false authority and false dilemma. Just kidding. I'm not going to only teach you 2, 1, but 2 more. So false authority, using an expert of dubious credentials or using only one opinion to promote a product or idea related to appeal to authority. Mean that you only use the authority to have your main argument or your main claim. For example, the authority of prejudice is always true. So you're using this authority, for example, as we have already known of an authority, this prejudice is always true. So because of this authority, and also because of this, prejudice is always true, as been proven in many other kind of acts or many other kind of findings. So because of this, with the understanding of these authority, you will have a better understanding, and you continue to say about and about only related to this authority, and this is a logical fallacy or an error that you should avoid in debate. Lastly, is false dilemma, false dichotomy, fallacy of bifurcation, black or white fallacy, which we have just saw, which we have just seen in the video. two alternative statements are given as the only possible options, when in reality there are more. So you only put out two statements to say that, okay, two statements mean that it is actually true, and these two statements prove that it is true. However, there are more and more. So you have to prove why your own arguments or the two statements that you have proven is exclusive. And there are only these two arguments that is possible. You have to prove why, because there is other more, but you only said these are possibilities. This is actually what we usually said. It's a false dilemma. So yeah, there is 1 minute left. I would love you to all leave and then join back to the new link.